Hi, my dragons. This is Dr. Victor here, and we're going to continue with our lectures. We're doing attachment for psychology of violence and aggression, and we're just going to continue. I'm going to finish this up this week and next week, and then when we return to class, we will do our major field project presentations on those days. So just remember, it's just 10 minutes a piece. So in your presentation, you'll need to have a PowerPoint, or if you did a paper, some way to communicate what you did, what you found, what you recommended to fix the problem that you were investigating in your major field project. Okay, so continuing with attachment and aggression, you saw the images of Beth and the child of rage, and I'm going to be interested in reading what you thought about that whole situation and what it has to do with violence and aggression, and how you see the role of attachment and how that develops. So we're moving on to slide 17 of the first PowerPoint on attachment. It's called Chapter 13, Attachment, Anger, Aggression. Okay, so domestic violence, of course, another place where you see a lot of violence and aggression, and we are interested in how attachment theory augments that as well. So domestic violence is an exaggerated form of protesting a partner's behavior. That's someone has in mind that how the partner should be acting and then is not acting, and then so resorts to violence to try and amend that. So this is more common for offenders who are not securely attached, especially ones that have anxiety and other sorts of mental illness diagnoses or things that go along with that. So avoidant subjects should withdraw from conflict versus escalate it, because they try to dismiss their feelings and avoid expressing their vulnerability to it. So avoidant people sometimes continue to be violent or become violent during these escalating domestic violence conflicts, particularly if the partner was anxiously attached or demanded some sort of information from their involvement. So domestic violence and attachment theory is studied in two ways. Number one, by anxious attachment. And we see that this correlates with domestic violence across different types of examples of couple situations, whether they're married, cohabitating, dating, or whatever. Or two, abusive men who score high on anxiety reports. Okay, so we look at those types of individuals and programs and see what that is. So victims from domestic violence also suffer from anxiety and attachment insecurities, and most studies will find this to be the truth, and they're doing studies that look at how they are avoiding the situation as well, so they become avoidant in this situation. So attachment insecurity puts people at risk on both sides of domestic violence spectrum, and abuse will continue to increase if we don't have some sort of programming or something to address attachment issues in these situations. So violence is often reciprocal in domestic violence situations, and we see that victims often respond in ways that are violent and aggressive as well. Another manifestation of violence and aggression that we see is antisocial behavior. And again, antisocial behavior or antisocial personality disorder, number one, diagnosis in a correctional setting. So avoidant subjects are more likely than their counterparts to engage in antisocial behavior. Anxiously attached subjects sometimes engage in delinquent or criminal behavior as a way of crying for help. We have a saying that even bad behavior is better than bad behavior to get attention is better than no attention. Okay, so we see that as well. So they're crying out for attention in some of these cases and expressing their anger and resentment for avoidant subjects. And they try to engage in antisocial behavior to distance themselves or to demonstrate that by violating the rules They have lack of concern for other people, but it's very paradoxical because that is the very thing that they're seeking out. And we all probably know people where they really want attention and they really want to be part of something, but they go about it in the wrong way, and the way that they go about it really does push people away. So they kind of sabotage the very thing that they want or need. Levinson did a study and found a higher prevalence of avoidant attachment with delinquent groups versus other types of groups, and that delinquents who had committed violence offenses had an inability or an unwillingness to talk about their emotional experiences. So they're avoiding even the ability to get help for themselves, insecure attachment. So antisocial behavior, when you get into group situations, 95% of group male convicts had insecure attachment issues. So they don't have anyone that they could turn to, and they didn't have anyone to help them to see the right, what was going on with their behavior that ended up landing them in a correctional facility. So if antisocial behavior is associated with attachment insecurity, then interventions such as Beth had in that video to strengthen an attachment, to have a figure that they can bond with and develop those attachment bonds that were missing from childhood are the ticket for rehabilitation. Okay, and we saw that how that worked with Beth. So research in rehabilitation has found that inmates and juveniles who have a relationship with a staff member or some kind of official at a correctional facility, their antisocial behavior does decrease. And so when you go into a correctional facility, they do take a lot of different assessments that measure different sorts of things that, violence and aggression or attachment or anxiety, depression, but all those different, they get a battery of tests. And then if they enter programming, they take it again, and then they take it after programming so they can see if there's any progress being made on that front. Gerd did a study and found that juvenile inmates who formed secure attachments had lower rates of anger, had lower rates of depression, less behavioral problems, and had more positive experiences, and so they made good progress, okay? So the key was to get them someone who would be in their corner, someone who they could bond and attach to, and that was what was missing from earlier lives. So adolescents who formed more secure attachment bonds with staff, they were, headed in the right direction and had less aggressive behavior. And we do know that in correctional facilities and juvenile facilities, so one of the things that really does lengthen your stay and your inability to move past the correctional setting is what happens inside prison, okay? So convictions or bad behavior inside prisons only lengthens the stay. Intergroup aggression, higher levels of attachment anxiety were associated with more hostile responses to a lot of different types of aggression. There have been studies that looked at attachment security to eliminate negative behavior in groups, and this was even true, this lessened even when there was stress on groups if they intervened properly. So those programs that reduce the level of threat caused by outgroup subjects actually worked, okay? Increasing the sense of attachment security reduced aggression. So it's not only in an offender situation, it can be family situations and it can be work situations. And these studies were work situations, where a more cohesive and positive work situation where people attach to each other in a common goal reduced workplace violence and aggression. We see this also between different countries, okay? So violence and aggression, we see a lessening of that when people can attach to each other, when countries attach to each other. So you see different countries who are allies and they form an agreement, then you're less likely to see violence and aggression toward those countries by those countries. So there you have that as well. So they're better able than the people who are insecurely attached, the groups that are, or countries that are insecurely attached, to tolerate differences and to explore those differences and then refrain from intergroup aggression. Attachment has also been studied in terms of power relationships, okay? Aggression isn't always, maladaptive or destructive. It can be an adaptive strategy, and if you look at it through an evolutionary sort of perspective, you can see that, violence and aggression did move people forward, but the goal was dominance, or what we would call power. So felt power is the goal of the dominant system. It's a felt sense that is associated with a feeling of securing resources and things like that. So when this goal is blocked by some sort of influence or something like that, then you will see more aggression or aggressive behaviors and dysfunctional behaviors. So attaching to the people who may inhibit your power, to work out a solution and to have them become your ally is very important. An approach inhibition of power theory, Galinsky wrote this one, and feelings of power facilitates approach orientation or promotion orientation. So people are motivated toward a reward relationship sort of situation that is positive. It heightens attention to rewards and positive emotion, okay? So this sense of power counteracts with inhibition orientation. So what you want is a orientation that people will affiliate with each other and have a strengthening approach, not only to power, but to the affiliations that bring about power as well. So when they can expect greater rewards for their affiliations and attachments, and that's when you see more in terms of power. Powerlessness is associated with lack of attachment and inhibition processes, where people expect people to be more social, and then those things are not forthcoming. And approach orientation that we also talked about, this has some empirical support. And studies have shown that power, a sense of power, is associated with elevated risk-taking, engagement in risky behavior, okay? So an increased sense of power protects people from other people's influences and social pressure, and powerful people feel that they have control over others and they don't feel constrained by them, okay? So increasing people's sense of power may also increase their sense of psychological distance, okay? So there's a tendency to objectify other people, like they might be out of touch or something like that because they are in a powerful situation. So some researchers have found that increasing a subject's sense of power has a way to take over other people's perspective and to, empathize with them. So let's stop this here, and then we'll continue on tape 2.